directors on the board of Thermex Limited and its subsidiary Thermex, Babcock and Wilcox Limited. Since 1999, he has served on the boards of various companies, including Tata Group, Emphasis Limited, and Exide Industries Limited. Since 2003, Mr. Mirza has been involved in the movement for improving corporate governance standards in India. He is a fellow of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India by qualification and has served SR Botley Boy and Company and Ernst and Young from 1967 till his early retirement in April 2003 in their Calcutta and Mumbai offices, and has also been associated with their London office. Mr. Mirza was the India head of Jardine Matheson Limited for about 10 years after retiring from the profession. During that time, he has also served on the boards of some other companies and charitable institutions. Mr. Mirza has contributed to corporate governance and accounting profession both, being a speaker or chair at various conferences in India and abroad, and by authoring several professional publications which are widely referred. He has chaired and served on the boards of various professional bodies and chambers of commerce. He is a firm believer that human civilization is responsible for the destruction of the natural world. Mr. Mirza is actively involved with the Energy Resource Institute, widely known as TERI, amongst other non-government organizations. And I believe that in addition to his corporate governance related experience, his inclination and interest towards sustainability has triggered him to choose this topic. Otherwise, I have repeatedly been doing a mistake of caging him in a niche area called audit committee, considering his accomplishments in audit committees of various illustrious boards. So what I'm going to hear with you all from him is his perspectives on sustainability and the angle of the responsibility of the board. The topic becomes much relevant and contextual, considering a great wave touching the professional life of each and every one of us associated with either public sector organization or private sector organization called ESG. I see it as a wave because you never know how suddenly the waves come and how long they last, and how we learn to sail with the waves. Sometimes waves compel us to accommodate and adjust. Sometimes we ourselves get ready to accommodate and assimilate the impacts of the waves. I'm sure the perspectives which Mr. Mirza is going to share with us are expected to give us some food for thought, and also the questions which I believe will still remain even after the Q&A session in our minds, and we would try to look for the answers so that we become ready for more future-proof boards, I must say. I believe it is 4. I won't stand between you and sir. I welcome you, sir, again, and thank you for sparing your precious time and much appreciations for your zeal and enthusiasm to speak to our independent directors. We have crossed the century. We are about 150 plus. I'm sure very soon we will be 200 plus. So most welcome again, sir. Over to you for your discourse, please.
Thank you very much, Neeraj, for your very kind and generous words of introduction. Uh, you use the analogy of the waves and guiding your boat and adjusting your sails, trimming them to go with the wind and the waves. And if I can continue that same analogy, if you don't do that, then the waves will swamp your boat and you sink to the bottom. So, what we are going to talk about this afternoon is how do we trim our sails and steer our boat in the waves that are now facing us as human beings, not just as company directors or as corporations. Some of you, well, almost all of you, must have read or seen or heard of this very tragic accident that happened 3 days ago on the Purvanchal Expressway when four young men recklessly drove a new car they had bought, a BMW. According to the video, they had already reached 230 kilometers. One of them was heard urging the driver on to touch 300. Another one prophetically predicted that all four will die, which they did a little later. And this is actually the way humankind today is behaving. Because what was their behavior? Their behavior was they were aware of what they were doing was highly dangerous. So dangerous that they themselves predicted death. But the desire for pleasure, for fun, for enjoyment, whatever they were deriving out of driving a car at speed, was far greater than what they were certain would happen, a horrible disaster that was inevitable and it occurred. And this unfortunate incident is not a good way to start any talk, because you start ringing the death knell. That's not the way to start a talk, but the talk I'm to deliver today is indeed one which is to sound a very loud warning to those who are driving the cars of our world, mainly two groups of people, politicians and business leaders, particularly in the context of sustainability. It is these two groups of people who are driving the cars of humankind. They are driving the cars recklessly. They are aware that this is going to result in a terrible disaster, but none of them want to slow down. They all want to accelerate even more. You heard a few days ago, yesterday, I think, our Minister of Commerce saying we will be a $50 trillion economy in the next 28 years. This is what I mean by reckless driving. So, with that, I will launch into my presentation. We are going to talk about sustainability. There are three broad parts. One is a general introduction to the topic, and I'm afraid there will be a certain degree of repetition, something you're all already well cognizant of. But I do it only so that everything is brought to a focus in a summary, because we are constantly being bombarded by information on sustainability. So, in order to bring a focus to that information that we have been receiving over the last several years now through the media or any other manner that we have chosen, the second part is the core of today's discussion: what a board can be doing about it. And the last part is a small case study which I will take you through of a company that has demonstrated this conduct for many, many years, not for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. They've been demonstrating this conduct for many years. So it's a company I greatly admire, and I will give you. So that's three parts. With that, we will be off and running. So the first part is the introduction, as I said, understanding the issues and the risks. First is the direct impact. And when we talk about sustainability, I think the biggest issue there are two major issues of sustainability. One is climate change, and in the context of our own nation, the availability of water. So we're going to talk mainly about climate change. The availability of water also we will address. But what is the direct impact of climate change on our physical environment? temperatures are certain to increase, both the minimum and the maximum. And I think by 2050, they will be about 2 degrees higher. Now, many of you must be thinking that, I come into outside, the temperature shows 38 degrees, but with my remote, I'm able to bring my AC to bring the temperature down to 24. Or horror of horrors, some of us even leave it at 16 or 19. It's not that simple. The challenge is when the temperature, first of all, the 2 degrees is an average temperature. There will be a huge variation between the increase in each part of the country in different seasons of the country. So it could be anything up to 5 degrees, number one. Number two, it's not merely the impact for you as a human being on your personal environment. Can I cool it? It is the consequential impact of this change in temperature on many other issues, which we will come to shortly. The second is humidity. Almost invariably, it's going to increase, but in some locations, it might decrease. We already know of particulate matter in the air. If you live in Delhi, you have been living with it now every winter for the last many, many years, thanks to the burning of stubble. And this brown cloud or smog is visible, especially over the Gangetic belt in India, more than in any other country, because of a similar stubble burning behavior, wood stoves, coal use, so on and so forth. Change in wind patterns. I used to be on the board of Tata Power, and many years ago, I would say, 15, 16 years ago, 17 years ago, Tata Power wind turbines. And after about 10 years, we realized that many of these turbines are working because the wind patterns in that span of 5 to 10 years had changed so significantly that those machines became useless. And they were not the kind of thing you could pick up and take somewhere else and install somewhere else. So all you could do is to keep praying that the wind will again begin to blow in the places where the turbines had been installed. A lot of studies and research had gone into wind probabilities before those turbines were installed. But all of that research and studies could not predict what will happen after some years. So we are going to see considerable change in wind patterns, including catastrophic winds, which, of course, we are not new to. We have had storms, especially along our east coast, but those are getting more frequent, more violent. For the first time in the last 3 or 4 years, the west coast has seen cyclones, which had never been the experience. Obviously, rain affected by this. More or less, you could say Peninsula will see an increase in rain, but the north will see a decrease in rain. So that is a matter for great concern to everybody who is living up in the north. Land salination, desertification, landslides, I don't need to go into that any further. We continuously hear of landslides in our own fragile Himalayan ecology. But all of the others are visible to anybody who drives anywhere in India today. Erosion, salination, and of course, desertification. And finally, and of great concern, is what's going to happen to the seas around us. Perhaps the most significant thing is sea levels are rising even today. The predictions today, and I can tell you this, that every time the International Panel on Climate Change has been issuing its reports, and it has issued, I think if I'm not wrong, 6 reports now, each report is progressively predicting a worse situation. If they predicted that this will be the situation in 2050, in their first report, which was issued about 25, 30 years ago, the latest report predicts a far worse situation. And by the time we get to 2050, I fear, having seen this particular consistent pattern, that the situation will be even worse. So even all these eminent scientists from every country around the world applying all of their knowledge and science, have so far always faltered in assessing how serious the situation is becoming. Indeed, it's becoming more serious. So if any of us are hoping that the scientists have been proven to be mistaken, means things will actually be better. I'm afraid that's not what the past is telling us. We all hope that will be the case, but only fools depend on such hopes. And so when the sea levels rise, what are we going to see? The prediction is that by the end of this century, the sea levels in the Gulf of Khambat or the Gulf of Cambay, which means the cities of Surat, Bharuch, and a lot of our industrial belt, all those sea levels will be 1 meter higher than they currently are. They are 1 meter higher. Many factories and companies which are today on that coastal belt will no longer be functional. So there is a sea level issue, but long before we reach the issue of sea levels, because of the huge amount of carbon dioxide that's going into the air, that is getting dissolved in the oceans. Traditionally, the oceans had a huge reservoir of carbon dioxide. Now that reservoir is also getting released because at the bottom of the ocean was a lot, the water is very, very cold, and the carbon dioxide dissolved in that water didn't escape into the air. Now what is happening is that all of the water in the ocean is coming to a higher temperature. So it is releasing the carbon dioxide, but at the same time, as the carbon dioxide is being released, it's causing the ocean water to acidify. And as it's acidifying, it's affecting the marine life, whether it's fish or it's plankton or whatever is under the water, whatever grows under the water, that's all being affected. What are the consequential impacts of these things happening? We said the temperature may go up 2 degrees. Not a big deal for us. I got 3 air conditioners at home and I've got one in my office room. So I don't have to bother about 2 degrees. It can even go up 5 degrees. But all our crops are not benefiting from the air conditioning. And they will be affected severely. We already see that happening because of climate change, because of temperature rises, because of change in monsoon patterns, because of change in rainfall patterns. Agriculture is being, every year there is an impact on agriculture. We read about certain crops which are doing better, certain crops that do worse. With more carbon dioxide in the air, it should be good for agriculture. But with a drier environment, it will not be so good for agriculture. If the cycle by which the rain falls changes, plants which are ready or farmers who are readying their plants for plantation will have planted the seed and will find that the seed withers or the shoot withers because the rain didn't come as it used to. It will become a challenge for all of us in businesses. We have raw material from agriculture or marine, that availability. Pathogens, pests, predators, invasive species, all of that we are already exposed to. Vectoral and zoonotic diseases. COVID is a zoonotic disease. It jumped from an animal to us humans. There are increasing numbers of zoonotic diseases that are beginning to happen because of the environment being more conducive to transfers of such diseases from animals to humans. Loss of biodiversity, organic matter, oligotrophs displacing copiotrophs. Don't worry about that. Those are soil bacteria. If you have an interest, one day you can look it up. In the interest of time, I will go a little quicker. Loss of jungle and forest. And as I said to you, water availability. Because the rain patterns are going to change. In the north, there's going to be less. Snowing will be less. Glaciers. Take those of you who live in Delhi, Neeraj. You know, 100 years ago, the Yamunotri snow field from which the melting snow fed the Yamuna was 800 square kilometers. Today, it is half of that in 100 years. And it's shrinking at over 10 square kilometers a year, which means if it continues to shrink at that rate, that in another 40 years, there will be no water in the Yamuna because the whole ice field would no longer exist. I'm afraid a lot of our conduct is contributing to exactly what is happening. You must have read, we are driving railways into the Himalayas to make it easy for pilgrims and tourists to get into them. All of this is having an impact. But never mind about what the government is doing. It is we meeting as business leaders that we are going to talk about as we move forward. So, talking about that, the environment has an impact on businesses. I talked about the general impact till now. I go into more specifically the impact on businesses. There will be failures of utilities. Electricity companies, I gave you the example of sea level rise. If the sea level rises in Mumbai by a meter, it may not rise that much, but even less than a meter. Mumbai's only power station, which supplies half the power of Mumbai, will be under the sea. So whilst you may say that, look, my flat is in a building on Malabar Hill, so, I'm 100 meters above sea level, but if I can continue to live without electricity, and if there's no electricity, I'll have no water, certainly I can continue to live in my flat 100 meters above the sea's level. But if I need electricity or water, this will not be livable any longer. So there will be major impacts on utilities, on water, sewage. All these systems will fail if we have changing weather patterns and rising sea levels. It will affect transport systems, financial systems, like insurers. When there are massive claims on insurers for natural calamities, there may be many insurance companies that will no longer survive. A lot of our own Indian insurance industry covers its risks by reinsuring major risks with overseas companies. The overseas companies may no longer exist because of climate change. So there will be a complete destruction of the world as we know it, the business world. I'm not talking of the physical world that you and I currently live in. I'm talking of the business world. Economic interrelationships, government institutions will find it challenging to work. There are already predictions of major population migrations. There's a prediction that in the next 40 or 50 years, maybe about 1/3 of Bangladesh will be under the sea. What will happen when that happens? Most of those Bangladeshis have nowhere else to go except to come into India. Whatever you may do, you may put many fences of barbed wire or whatever else, or other devices you may have. For them, it will be die by drowning or die by entering the country. So there will be major migrations, the longer term. There's a very interesting book I've just finished reading on this topic, which predicts that almost the entire tropical belt will be unlivable. We will all have to move into the temperate zone. So all of us in India will all have to go up into Siberia. Siberia will become a more livable place. India will not be livable. I don't look. Won't happen in your or my lifetime. It's going to happen after that. But it's like those fellows driving in the car. It looks an inevitability. It will happen. It will not happen within a few minutes. It will happen after many decades, maybe a couple of centuries. But it will be too late to do anything about that then. We are already a little past what's called the tipping point. So population migrations, obviously there'll be geopolitical conflict. If all of us want to go into Russia, I don't think the Russians will take very kindly to 150 crore Indians coming into their country. So there will be conflict and there will be increased taxation. So there are going to be major long-term impacts. There are obviously shorter-term impacts. But I think the bigger issue is, what does business do today to mitigate the longer-term impacts, which we shall bequeath the generations that will follow us? Because if we are responsible people, as responsible business leaders, we have to take steps and do what is needed so that we don't leave our successors with problems. Now, business in turn has impact on the environment. A fair amount of that has already been discussed. So very briefly, we will look at that. It's As you all know, economic activity is putting carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxide, and particulate matter into the air. A lot of this is happening through the automobile industry. It's happening through power generation. It's also happening, some of this, through animal husbandry and agriculture, which we'll briefly touch upon. We talked about water scarcity and contamination, which is a contribution from business. And finally, soil contamination. And sorry, my whole thing is not getting shown here. Scroll this down. Degradation, right? So it's affecting, soil is getting affected that way. And what is the major impact of human activity? You can see that from a thing that I've called various sources. The one in the middle, which you are looking at, is methane, CH4. And you will see that agriculture and animal husbandry puts a lot of methane. Methane is an extremely dangerous greenhouse gas. So between carbon dioxide and methane, we are getting the global warming impact. These two are dangerous polluting gases. And you can see what major contributions are from, mainly generation of power, manufacture in general, steel, cement, chemicals, other industries. Obviously, mobility, which is cars and aeroplanes, and ships, because ships burn the worst kind of fuel possible to make shipping viable. So all of them put stuff into the air, and then there are various other causes for it. So this, friends, is the impact that business is having on the environment. Moving on, I showed you two things. What the environment is doing to business is exposing business to risks. And the broad categorization of risks would be changed. Now we're looking short term, in the next 5 years, 10 years. We're looking at that, something that all of us should be bothered about. Changing policy and legal. We already see this happening. Business groups lobbying to water down environmental regulations that are affecting them. Technology. Neeraj mentioned I sit on the board of Thermax. We had a study done and we found some of the technologies we use will not be usable when the temperature has gone up 2.5 degrees in the next few years. So we have to start thinking of developing new technologies. Markets will change as people become more cognizant of the impact of their behaviors currently, as also because markets themselves may shift to new locations. There's a reputation risk, because if once it becomes known that you are in an industry that is harming the environment and is not sustainable, that particular business, or your particular conduct, the rest of industry is behaving more responsibly, but your company is not, your reputation is at risk. And lastly, physical. I told you about, and there is two types I have categorized that. Acute means sudden impact, storms, floods, so on. Chronic means long term, like if the temperature goes up, certain things may not work. Or if the sea levels rise, my factory will no longer be able to survive in that location. So that is chronic. That's not something that I can get rid of in one go. And then there is responsibility. And how do we take our responsibilities as business leaders? We look at governance in our company and how governance is focused upon sustainability, because this thinking has to start from the top and permeate down. Obviously, it has to be part of our strategy. It has to be part of managing these risks, because I said there are these risks. So if we identify those risks, how well are we managing them? And lastly, what metrics are we going to use to measure how we are managing those risks? So what is the best way to do this? This is what I have tried in the companies where I used, now I'm only on one company, but earlier I have crowdsourced the from those companies' managers, what is their assessment of each of these? And let me just tell you, I had about a dozen questions or a little more that I put to them, and I'll repeat those questions here. I don't know, Neeraj or Manoj, will these slides be on the website or something for people to access later?
Sir, the recording of the program and the presentations will be uploaded on IAC Data Bank website, sir.
Very good. So you don't need to, if you think my questions are worth taking note of, they will be there on the website. So the first set of, and there's 4 slides. So let me say, first of all, I said, we ask each manager, what do you think is the time horizon for making our assessment? So a short-term horizon, a medium-term horizon, and a long-term horizon. Most said short-term is 3 years, medium is 3 to 6 or 7, and beyond that is long-term. Because our response on the remaining questions will differ depending on the time horizon we are looking at. We start by asking what are the physical risks? And we'll come to some of those questions as we go ahead. But what are the physical risks? And I talked about sea level rise. I talked about no water being available. So I set up a production facility that needs water. And I'm in a place where water will no longer be available in sufficient quantities. What could become technologically obsolete? And I gave you that example of that technology, that product, which will no longer be usable if the temperature goes up by that particular amount. Products where the efficiency may go down. They may still be usable, but if the efficiency goes down, you may find your customers don't want to buy your product, or if they want to buy your product, they are going to ask for a better price, so on. And similarly, temperature change, air quality. If the air quality index goes beyond 500, and as you know, even today, there are many days in the year when the air quality index is over 500. Nowadays, cars come with these little things on the dashboard. As I drive around whole day long, I look at that, and there are many days when it's showing over 500, and we know that certainly in North India, there are times when it goes beyond the counter. The counter shows 999. It can't go more because it only shows 3 digits. So in that particular highly polluted air, how efficiently will your products work? They may still work, but if they need a certain purity of air for them to work, how will they lose efficiency? Which of our products or processes will be affected if the water is less? What do we make that's not biodegradable? As you know, there's been a lot of emphasis on plastics. It's not just plastics. There are other products that are not biodegradable. What are those? What can we do to replace them or to reduce their use? What products or services can we help that will make our customers more efficient in what they are doing to help our customers in turn? How can we make our products and processes more recyclable? Recyclable means reusable in another form or even in the same form. So can you take it apart? Or take this whole solar panels that we are now getting millions and millions of tons of solar panels are being installed right around the world. They all have a life of about 25 years. Most of them are in fact repowered before they reach their physical life. So whatever, 20, 25 years. What will happen when those millions of tons of solar panel come off production lines and they're all ripped out of the ground and replaced with new solar panels? What's going to happen to this huge mountain of trash? I don't know, I've not calculated it, but it would perhaps be higher than Mount Everest. So what is going to be done with this? We made those products recyclable. Are they recyclable in a manner that's convenient? So today, please let us start designing products that can be recycled conveniently or ideally can continue to be reused. It's been a business tactic of many businesses to continuously bring out new products and to bring new products which replace the old ones, and the old ones can no longer be used and cannot be repaired. They're specially designed to make them not repairable so that people are forced to buy a new one. If you own a car today, well, most of us do, unfortunately, you will find that when you go in the old days, when I had my old Ambassador in Calcutta, anything went out of order, that little piece would be replaced or repaired. Today, a whole sub-assembly is removed and I have to buy a new sub-assembly. Never mind the 30 or 20,000 rupees that I have to pay out. That I'm aware of. It's just the enormous waste that one single part not working, a whole sub-assembly is thrown away. So the entire design is made in such a manner that people are compelled to use more than they should. Ask your company, are they making stuff like this? And what can they do to stop doing that? What could the government be legislating to punish or incentivize better behavior? What could be the tax on that? How will your reputation be affected? And remember, it's not just you, it's the entire value chain, right from the first vendor at the bottom of the value chain who is taking basic natural material to turn it into some usable product which eventually reaches you and it fits into whatever you are making, and ultimately you use that to make something else which goes on finally back to human consumption. So that entire value chain, how will sustainability and climate change impact that value chain? What metrics should we use? I mentioned that. What process should we follow for managing those risks? What happens if our business goes into decline? How will we keep it successful or surviving even when it's in decline? And therefore, finally, are we behaving responsibly? These are the, about a dozen or 16 or 17 questions that I asked my managers, and there were interesting responses to those. Now, the last part of my presentation is the last part is in two parts. The first part is a series of pictures which I will show you. Notice what you will. Over in 1 minute, we will look at about a dozen photographs. At the end of it, I will point out to you what I noticed in those photographs. And the second part of this section, as I said to you, is we will do a small case study of a company that has behaved with enormous responsibility throughout its life. It's a remarkable case study. And I don't see why most businesses cannot emulate them if they wish to. So there are some other considerations. I hadn't quite finished. Sorry. Excuse me. Value chain impact, I talked about that. You know, there are three, the amount of greenhouse gas you generate is measured at 3 levels. If any of you are interested, Google Carbon Trust, scope 1, 2, and 3. You will see what those 3 are. The ethical dimensions. Would you deal with customers or vendors who are behaving irresponsibly? You may be responsible as a company, but will you continue to deal with people who are behaving unsustainably? Or will you remove them because it may cost you more to shift to someone else? What are the opportunities? There's a list of opportunities. Reporting, as you know, our government has already come out with a very good, and the IICA had a major contribution in this questionnaire, and I think the 1,000 largest listed companies this year will have to make the BRSR report, Business Responsibility Sustainability Report. It's an extremely detailed and elaborate report. I think it'll be a few years before companies quite get the hang of giving reliable information as required by this report. And certainly there is the International Sustainability Standards Board that came into being in Glasgow last November, and they're going to start issuing international disclosure standards on sustainability as well as ESG. So they're covering all 3, but particularly sustainability, and their first draft standard is something you may want to go again on the web and have a look at. It's industry wise. They've taken about 50 industries and they've got detailed sustainability matrices for each of those 50. Now, I told you I'll show you a series of photographs. I'm going to show you a series of photographs that were, as you can see, it's taken out of a book. This book is about now. These photographs were 20 years ago. But that's not the point. The point is, I don't think things have changed from when I cull these pictures out. And they're on the internet also now, so you can get them there if you wish to, but you can see them here right now. This is the amount of food, and because you can't read the little bit at the bottom, I'll tell you, this is in Germany. This is about the kind of amount of food this family ate in a week in Germany, spending $500 at that time. Obviously, it's more money now. This is the amount of food an American family ate at that time in 1 week. About $350 is what they spent on this stuff. This is the amount of food the Japanese ate at that time, a little over $300. Italy, $250. Mexicans, nearly $200. It's not the dollars. I'm not emphasizing the dollars. I'm asking you to just observe the food. Who are these? Polish, $150. Egyptians, $70. Ecuador, $30. Bhutan, $5. And finally, Chad, $1. This is the amount of food they eat. Now, the point is not that the richer people were spending more money and eating a lot of food, which they shouldn't have, because I guess many of the people who are in these photographs here may now all be having problems with their health. That's not the point. Things you will observe, and if you haven't, you will notice, and if you haven't, I will draw your attention to it. As you go up and down, the wealthier countries have a lot of food. This is all food that has come out of companies and business operations. There is much less of produce that came out of the natural environment. There's a little, but you can see here, the Germans, almost everything has come out of some corporation, some brand, something that has bombarded them with advertising to consume more, whatever, Coca-Cola or Beck's beer or whatever stuff they've got out here. The same with these people. You can see there, they've got large cans of Coke, Lay's, so Pepsi. All of these people have been constantly washing their brains to buy more such stuff. Whether it's healthy or unhealthy is not the point. That's another issue. It's also a point, but that's not the point I'm trying to make. You can see the amount of, as you go down the amount of money that's spent, people buy less and less branded, and buy more and more natural produce. What does this tell you? What it tells you is that corporations who have been encouraging consumerist lifestyle today straddle the world. Indeed, we measure success by growth, whether it's at a national level, GDP, international level. There's such a lot of concern. The world is entering a recession. Indeed, it's a matter of concern. I'm not underplaying that concern. But all our measures ultimately get down to how can we increase the amount of consumption so that the value of production goes up and the economies do well. Indeed, they do. But its counter effect is falling upon the environment. So the impact of consumerist behavior that is solely the responsibility of businesses and of the companies on whose boards you sit or for whom you work, and companies on whose boards I sit and I work, I'm sorry to say, have been encouraging such behavior, either directly if they were making consumer products or indirectly if they were supporting that kind of behavior. So we have today a very grave situation we have entered into, because of our consumerist lifestyles, run or driven mainly by the wish for businesses to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. That's why, if you remember, I had a question in that questionnaire: how can we be successful even as we shrink our top line? What can a business do to have less of its products being consumed by people, but still do successfully well? And so I'm going to show you one example of that, a responsible business. And he's a man called Yuan Chouinard, still alive, old man, he's in his 80s. Some of you may have read this about Patagonia recently, of what they've done. And if you haven't read, you may have seen Patagonia jackets and Patagonia climbing gear, stuff like that. So if you're a trekker or a hiker, you may well have come across Patagonia products. So Mr. Chouinard, he was an avid rock climber, deep sea diver, all sorts of outdoor sporting stuff he used to do. And so one of the things he did early in his career is he started to make rock climbing gear. And so in 1957, he started making rock climbing equipment. And this rock climbing equipment included what are called pitons. What are pitons? They are very big nails that you drive into the rock so that you can sling your rope over the nail to support you when you are up on the mountainside. So those are pitons. What he noticed is that on rock faces that were favorite climbing faces, those that driving in of pitons was beginning to crack the rock, and the rock was beginning to fragment and fall. And he thought that was irresponsible. Pitons was 70% of his top line. One day he said, I will no longer sell pitons, but he made something else, which to climbers, and I'm not a climber, so I don't know if I've got this right, but they are called chalk stones or hexes. So this is another device which served the same purpose as a piton, but he at one stroke said, here is 70% of my top line. Tomorrow morning onward, I will no longer sell that product. I will experiment with a different product. He took a big risk. How many of you are on businesses which would say one morning, 70% of our top line we are abandoning? Little later, he started the outdoor clothing business. As far back as 1986, he began to donate 1% of sales, not a bottom line, 1% of sales or 10% of profits, whichever was higher, for environmental causes. This was way back in 1986, long before we had our CSR and 2.5% only of the bottom line. So he began to do this, and he owned the business. It's not as if other shareholders were being asked to pick up the tab. He owned the business. Then later he realized that though he was not using synthetic material, the cotton he was using, he realized was causing enormous environmental damage. Because as you know, cotton fields require a lot of pesticide to be sprayed over them, and they are major, they need a lot of water to grow cotton. And for providing these cotton fields with water, dams were being constructed. And each dam is environmentally damaging. So he said, I will no longer buy such cotton. So one day, like he stopped the pitons, he stopped buying the much cheaper regular cotton. And he said, I will only buy organic cotton grown in sustainable locations. Having done, and he went around the world, he mapped the world, the cotton fields, and he identified exactly where this kind of cotton was available. Now you may say he put in a lot of effort and cost. This was his USP. He could sell using this USP. What did he do? On the contrary, he put it on his website and he said, all garment manufacturers around the world, I invite you to stop using unsustainable cotton. Please switch to sustainable cotton. I have done all the hard work for you. Just go to my website and you will find out where you will get that cotton. So he did that. Fair trade, sewing, traceable wool. I won't get into all of this. Similar good purpose actions. Right. 2002, he launched an NGO called 1% of the Planet. By now, I think there are about 5,000 companies around the world who are members of this NGO who annually contribute 1% of their top line for environmental causes. They give it to this NGO, which then uses it for supporting various other environmental NGOs around the world. So there's 5,000, and I think by now they've already, I think, had about over 3,000 crores of donations they have collected. These are not major corporations, though there are some major ones. They're giving 1% of their top line. In 2003, he launched Common Thread, not 2003, it doesn't matter the year. Common Threads, he said, my products should be reusable. So you can go on YouTube, you will see how you can repair a jacket. If the zip gets stuck, what you should do to get the zip to work again. Because in the West, if you have a problem like that, a button falls off, you just throw the thing away because there is no darji or cobbler down the street to whom you can go and give it for repair. So he put out products which were his buyers could use to repair. Indeed, he said, if you're not able to repair it, send it to me. I will repair it and return it to you in my factories. In 2011, on Black Friday, Black Friday is the big sales day of the year. He took a full page ad in, I think, the New York Times, in which he said, don't buy this jacket. What jacket was it? It was his. He said, consumerism is destroying the world. Don't buy my products unless you absolutely need to. So he put this out. And then a year later, he's turned his business into the B Corporation. The B Corporation is a benefits corporation, which does exactly what our own companies exhorts us to do, that these companies must balance the interests of all their stakeholders, not only the shareholder, because profit is shareholder. It said, no, shareholder is not on a pedestal. B corporations treat every stakeholder equally, and they will sacrifice profit if it is harming another stakeholder, or if by sacrificing some profit, the commensurate benefit perceived to another stakeholder is far greater. That is the decision they will make, not the other way around. And finally, a few months ago, he has given away his entire company to philanthropic environmental activity. So here is a man who has consistently, you can see in these 50 years of his business, behave with the environment in front of him. He's done business. He's not said, I will turn into a sadhu, stop selling, stop manufacturing, stop buying. He has been in business, but he has behaved consistently. Now you would think that, okay, this fellow has behaved like a sadhu. His business must be in dire financial conditions. This is what we have here. Today makes a profit of 800 crores a year, and recently it was valued at about 25,000 crore rupees. So you can see that having done this, he's still got a business that's financially done well. So it's done good for the environment. It's also done good for whoever owns the business. In his particular case, of course, he's gone further and he gave it away. So it's now owned by, as he said, I'm giving it to the world. It's owned by the environment. But it doesn't mean that if you behave responsibly, you don't encourage the consumption of your products. Indeed, you actively discourage their consumption. It doesn't mean you will therefore not succeed. Conclusion, friends, and then we'll have questions. I'll just say, remember these 5 R's. Refuse to consume. This is personal behavior. I'm not talking of business, but even in business. Reduce your consumption, repair, reuse, and recycle. With that, friends, I am at the end of my 31 slides I see. Neeraj, I'm open to comment, question, criticism, because what I've said is controversial. There are many different views. I don't know everything, so I would certainly welcome other views. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very thought-provoking discourse. And the last slide on 5 REs:
Yes.
refuse to consume, reduce what you consume, repair till usable, reuse whatever can be used, and recycle when beyond use. I'm sure I have, as I recall, I have heard about 3 REs. You have stressed them
I
further,
know. I know.
and the special attention is on repair till usable. It's very, I mean, this is something which is not not part of our agenda these days. Or even you were talking about companies, I could hear even companies are manufacturing products which are not perfectly repairable. So and they want that people should use and throw, like in US or in developed
Yes.
nations the
Yes.
practices. But definitely it gives us a strong thoughts to
Yeah.
take this discussion forward, and it's a big call for action rather.
Yes.
It's a big
Yes.
call
Yes.
for action. So friends,
Yes.
let us utilize this time. I could see a lot
Mr.
of
Jain has a
views and
question. Yeah.
opinions and questions also in the chat box, but it will be better to hear from the participants directly. And I'm happy around 250 of the nominated participants have joined. So can we open the floor for questions? But one by one, you can raise your hand. We can see your hand on the screen, and then we can invite.
Neeraj, Mr.
Yeah,
Jain
I
has
can
had,
see
we can ask him.
Mr. Anune. Yeah, Mr. Anune, your question, and I would request you to be brief and question only. No statement, preferably no statement, unless it is adding some more value to the discussion we already had from Mr. Mirza. Mr. Anune, unmute yourself, please, sir. Unmute yourself, sir. We can't hear you. Manoj, can
we have given the access.
Sir, we have given you the rights to unmute. Please unmute yourself. The unmute button is there at the center of your screen, uh, in the bottom.
Neeraj, can we give someone else
In
a
the
chance?
meantime, we can take Ashok Kumar Jain, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Ashok Kumar Jain, is my voice reaching you? Mr. Ashok Kumar Jain, I could see your raised hand.
Yes, good evening, sir. Good evening. Very nice presentation. Sir, I have a
I
question
could not
about
hear you,
this
sir.
Patagonia.
Yes.
I'm able to put forward my point. It's audible.
Yeah, it's audible.
Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Say particularly, I have a question about this Patagonia. Say there have been changes in the business over a period of time, and then finally one business was also closed. So I wish to understand in a elaborative way, is it because of change in external environment, or some internal reasons were also responsible for this kind of change over a period of time?
Mr. Jain,
Yeah.
I explained that it was the intent of the owner of the business, Mr. Chouinard, that it should not be environmentally damaging. And so
Okay.
every time he realized activity his business was doing was harmful to the environment, he found a way to mitigate or to eliminate that harm. So that is what he consistently did. He didn't close the business. The business continued. It's still continuing. You can go, if you go west, I don't think in India you get it. Go into any store and ask for a Patagonia coat or a Patagonia climbing gear or something, you will get. You can buy it.
No, I mean to say, sir, those businesses which were not favoring the environment or which were against the external environment, those businesses he had changed. That was I wanted to
Yes.
point
Yes.
out.
Correct.
So our understanding is that, sir, over a period of time, the businesses, that there is a responsibility on the board or on the
Yes.
directors
Yes.
or on the promoters to make changes in the businesses as per the
Yes.
requirement of the society as well as the environment, not
Absolutely.
only as the profit motive. Yeah, right.
Correct. Agreed. Neeraj, the
Thank you.
next.
Yeah,
Thank
can
you.
we have Miss
Fine, yeah.
Anjara, please, now? You can unmute yourself. Hawa Anjara. Is my voice reaching you, ma'am? Okay. In the meantime, Mr. George Kora, can you unmute yourself, sir, please? Yeah, you have the rights. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Mirza sir, old article from SRB Calcutta and worked under you long time back. My question, what I actually saw on those photographs was one more thing probably you also noticed is that the packaging, which again
Yes.
is not recyclable.
Yes.
So
Yes.
maybe companies could be looking at that, and I'm sure there could be laws also around that, where the packaging could be something which will be easily degradable. Because people are going to buy. The question is, can they pay an extra few
Yes.
50 paisas to
Yes.
get degradable things? That was the thought, sir.
I agree. Next one, Neeraj.
Yeah, Mr. Narendra Kumar, please unmute yourself, sir.
Thank you, sir, very much for a great talk. My question is that, see, of late, for last few years, the government has made a policy that all the cars, diesel cars, should be scrapped after 10 years and petrol car after 15 years. Now, that's quite contrary to the repair till usable. And it is going to create a great junk and a lot of adverse effects. So, I mean, we say something and the policies are something else. So, how do we deal with that?
Mr. Kumar, when I said repair till usable, I think what we also need to balance is if we keep using something which the corresponding harm to the environment is far greater than the saving we are doing scrapping it, the saving or the protection of the environment by not scrapping it early, then perhaps we should scrap it. So to use a diesel car, which is now 10 or 15 years old or whatever, maybe it's the damage it does over its remaining, because there have been cars. I used to have a car I used for 30 years, or at least I bought it secondhand. So by the time I finally scrapped it, it was 30 years old. Maybe that wasn't a good idea. I scrapped it sooner. All the harm it did till it became 30 years old was much greater than what would have happened if at the age of 20 I had sent it for. So I think that's, I can talk at a conceptual level. I can't talk of precise things. And of course, the government will always behave with populism in mind. So we must never put great confidence in the government. That's why we all have to behave responsibly. Businesses have to behave responsibly. For the government to make the rules, because they have to pander to the voter.
Thank you, sir. But my second question into this is, say, suppose I have a car. It has run only 10,000 kilometers in a year. It's perfectly good condition, and there is no emissions coming out of it. Why should I scrap?
I agree, but now you don't ask me this. You have to ask Mr. Gadkari.
Okay.
No, I meant to say the policy level, when people like you or IICA, they are very much in line with the policy level. So how does it? It's quite
I
contrary.
understand. See, I think they make the policy for the vast general population. Now, you may be the rare person who has got a 15-year-old car with few kilometers on the clock. and not emitting. But they're making it for the average guy who drives 30,000 kilometers a year, and in 15 years, run 4 to 5 lakh kilometers. So, but there are always some of us, like I have a pair of shorts I've been wearing for 20 years, and my whole family marvels at that they haven't fallen apart. But now I don't think there are many people who were wearing 20-year-old shorts. Okay, so so next question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
next
Thank
question.
you.
Mr. Lakshmikant Gupta, please unmute yourself, sir.
Yeah, hi, Lakshmikant Gupta here. In fact, if you see the items like Vicks, Iodex, parachute oil, or any other such products, including a few liquid medicines, all of these are coming in the plastic packet. And
Yeah.
in the GMs and the strategy meetings of those company promoters and the MDs used to say that these are the effective cost cutting, cost reducing strategies. Now the situation is that even customers do not have any option search for bottle glass Vicks, bottle glass Iodex like that. So from where they will buy, which has a environment friendly packing.
You're right, Mr. Gupta. That's why my appeal just now is to the people who have an ability to change that. The directors on the boards which are of those companies which are using plastic packaging. So my appeal is there to give us a choice. You're absolutely correct. We have no choice. Neeraj, can we have a couple of ladies? We can't put all this only for the men, as it is we need diversity on
I
board.
agree. I am just, I'm not, differentiating because, um,
No, I'm sure you're not.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
However, we have Miss Hanjara. I think she has a question.
Okay,
Could you
here
please take it?
one point. I think it will add value.
Yeah,
Like we all must have learned during our academics that Mumbai is built on the lands, starting from Kolaba till Andheri. And by depositing soil into the sea, the Mumbai was created. That's why Mumbai is sinking around 1 inch per year. So that is the natural reason out of it. So why these things don't come out in various environment friendly strategies? Because this is very, very important. All the coastal cities built on by depositing the soil in the sea. So I think
Yeah, I
Mhm.
agree, Mr. Gupta. What else can I say? Yes.
yeah, great. Miss Hanjara, do you have a question? I'm.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So first and foremost, thank you so much for this fantastic session. Nawashir, sir, each and every word you spoke, it kept us attentive throughout the session because the words you used, the way you explained each and everything, it was so fantastic, totally. And thank you, Dr. Neeraj Gupta, sir, and
Ms.
team for
Anjana, don't use up the
wonderful
time
such a
praising me.
Question.
Now ask your question.
I'm coming to the question directly. I have two questions. One is, are independent directors really independent? This is the first question. And second question is, kindly share your experience of the first time you are selected as independent director. That's it, sir.
See, this session is not on that topic, but I'll just answer
Okay.
the question very simply. Independent
Okay, sir.
state of mind. So if in your mind you believe you are independent, see, I always give the analogy. In a family, you're not independent of your own wife and your own spouse and children, isn't it? But what is in the interest of the family, you will do. You will not succumb to your spouse or your son wanting to indulge in some conduct which is bad for the family. You're independent. Similarly, on a board, why can you not be independent if you have? So your mind has to be independent. It's not a list of things that you shouldn't be this, you shouldn't be that. Right. Next question, please.
Yeah, Dr. Mona Shah, can you hear me, ma'am? Yeah, unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. I typed it out, so I go straight to it and read it out. It's sustainability solutions for posterity using recyclable and reuse at the level you suggest is enormous. I have a consistent record in publishing papers in sustainability. So that's the first part of my statement. However, as an ID, we would definitely play a strong role in asking the right questions. I think that's what I gleaned from your session today, that we can ask the right questions. However, how does one begin to make the practices more in the business as usual mode and our role in ensuring it? I would really like to have some pointers in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. In my own experience, I began by saying every proposal to the board, not every proposal, most proposals to the board invariably justify the proposal applying financial benchmarks, payback period, IRR, discounted cash flow, all of that justifies it. All of these measures only subserve one stakeholder, which is the shareholder, because it says our profits will get more and more. I say, when you now come with your presentation next time, I want to see not only these measures, of course, I want to know what do you perceive as the impact on the other stakeholders who are being significantly impacted by your proposal. So I have a proposal like this, we're talking about a merger. And merger proposal says, we will do this merger, etc., etc. In 24 months, there will be 300 crores of value unlocked by synergy. Very nice. I say, what is the meaning of this synergy? So ultimately, what does the synergy boil down to? There are 1,000 people who currently have jobs will no longer have jobs because now all the duplicate people will be removed. So we don't need 2 CFOs, we don't need two HR heads, we don't need 2 personnel managers, we need only 1. So we'll get rid of a whole lot of people. I say, hold on then. We got to reflect on this. Our employees are also our stakeholders. The particular proposal you are making, how good is it for them? And is it justified when we look at the damage we are going to cause to 50 people or 1,000 people or whatever number of people? Absolutely correct. We raise the issue, get the board. See, it's a process that's going to take a long time. It's sensitivity to these issues. I think all of us have been trained in at business, and we have lost it. We don't have the sensitivity to other stakeholders. So it is for us as directors, by quite rightly, as you said, asking the right questions, putting a different perspective on an issue, and make people begin to realize that they have a greater responsibility in only making more and more profit. But each situation is different. Neeraj, can we ask the class? They have had a hand up, and there is, I don't know, of them.
Surbi, please help us with the question. Dr. Surbi?
Yeah, somebody is coming up, I think.
Yeah, she's rushing to the mic.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Finally, I'm able to unmute myself. So we asked a question. Thank you, first of all, for your amazing presentation, sir. And okay, so we asked a question pertaining to this CRISIL ESG compendium. So that's a question coming from one of our students here. So how credible or reliable is that ESG compendium, which is available on the CRISIL's website?
And is there any scope for improvement?
I'm extremely sorry. I have not seen this compendium, so I don't know anything about it. I really can't respond to that. I'm sorry.
It's basically, let me just help on this, because
Thank you,
of course, can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, so let me just basically, she's referring to a CRISIL compendium. It is nothing but the first ever attempt in the country, like MSCI and all do, the global level, for some indicators and rankings of the companies on their ESG initiatives. So I believe the plight is to understand how reliable such rankings are, and can they be referred as a reference point or not? So I think it's a more general question, and you will be able to respond.
Yeah. Class, see, I spent most of my life as an auditor. So I am a cynic who is always skeptical of most things I'm shown. And I would be very, very skeptical of this because a lot of such studies are done based upon one, the information the company furnishes to you, and you don't know how reliable that information is. Two, with the method of measuring or defining something is not standardized today. So if I say, what is the social impact of something I'm going to do? How do I measure or define? First of all, how do I define social impact? Secondly, how do I measure it? And does every company which is in this contest use the same definition and the same measure? Some may be much more rigorous and therefore get lower marks. And some company may put its a PR department in charge of responding, so they will glorify something that they shouldn't be glorifying and get higher marks. So I'm a great cynic about such things. But I think we're at a point when there is need to sensitize corporate people. So I would not play down the importance of whatever Chris has done because it's creating a sensitization to the concept. And therefore I applaud it. Very, very rapidly, we'll have to move from merely making people aware of their ESG obligations to actually acting on that. Because one thing is to disclose, and we don't know how reliable disclosures are. Even today, financial statements, which are audited by renowned audit firms, we find there are ghotalas in them. You know that. So who knows about all this other stuff which nobody audits, which hasn't got any standard, nothing on it. So look at everything skeptically, but at this stage, thankful that every effort in this direction is good, ultimately, our long-term survival as human beings. Thank you, Neeraj.
Great. I'm moving to next question, sir. Captain Tapas.
So we have one more question, if we may please address.
Don't mind. Neeraj is the ring master.
Okay. Second and the last one from the class.
Yes,
only.
sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we have Shoaib. He'll ask the question.
Hello, sir. So I just wanted to ask that in your presentation, you stated that the solution to the ever-impending doom of climate change is cutting down on our consumptions. But don't you think that a technological advancement of the machinery and technology that we have would be a better option because human want is it's unstoppable.
What you have said, I understand. I agree with you that technology, but see, the rate of climate change is overtaking the rate at which new technologies are developing to sustain consumerist behavior. I'm afraid we are at that prediction because we've been hearing this technology will come out with something, and we have, after all, we now generate electricity using renewables. But the amount of investment, the amount of time it will take, by then the impact on us will be already too great. And my worry is, based on whatever little understanding I know, I'm a retired auditor, I'm not a scientist, but whatever little understanding I have, the environmental impact of all these technologies is lesser at this point or even for the next few years than the negative impact of a consumerist lifestyle. And by the time the technologies have got to a point where they are able to counterbalance it, the impact on the environment is relative. Remember this, that every gram of carbon dioxide that you put into the air will be there forever. So it's a progressively cumulative negative impact that's happening. And so by the time all these technologies result in a lesser and lesser amount of carbon dioxide going into the air, which is happening even now, the accumulated amount of carbon dioxide in the air would have become so vast as to make the impact on us severe. So the solution is to put less carbon dioxide into the air from now, not when the whole world is powered by renewable energy. That will take many, many decades to achieve. We have to do that now. And so what's the quick solution? There are two ways. There are two principal reasons: population growth and consumerist lifestyle. Population growth, is very little you can do about it. But consumerist lifestyle, it's between you and me and in our business leaders. And it's for the business leaders to do something. Don't, as I said earlier, look at the politicians. They pander to people who say, we'll want a consumerist lifestyle. We want to consume like that American family or the German family. That's what we believe is a successful progression in our lives. They all want to consume like that photograph I gave you of those Germans or Americans. Politicians will pander to that yes, we will give you that sukh. If we all become as consumerists as those Germans or Americans, as Indians, I'm talking of 130, 40 crores of us, the whole world will be in an even much worse state for many thousands of years. Thousands of years. A little while.
Okay. Can I take next question, sir? Captain Tapas.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity for asking the question. My question is on the structure, related to the structure of the board. Given that sustainability or ESG is a complex matter, it is a long-term matter. It requires a lot of investment and planning. Is it a good idea to have a committee around the board where the board is by design required to have a ESG committee, just like we have the NRC, we have the audit committee, where you can have qualified people, ESG proficient directors on board, and that discussion around with competent people from various, because it's a multi-specialization function. Because the quality of the discussion within the board is very important for the outcome of it. So is it a good idea to, or is it feasible to have
I understand.
Sure.
So, see, I am not a great believer in mandating it. The minute you mandate, the city is crawling with advisors who will show you a way to achieve the letter of the law, but not its purpose. So I think ultimately, company believes that there is value in something, it will do it. So I have sat on boards where, the audit committee is there, it's a headache, and the quicker they finish off their work and get on with life, the better for us. And I have sat on boards where they really believe the audit committee creates value. Those are audit committees that are creating value for the business. So if you want to get around this thing, you get around it. As you know, when they first mandated women directors, most people brought their wives on, starting with Mr. Mukesh Ambani, who at least has a wife who would, I'm sure, have been contributing to the board. But I don't know about many of the other spouses that were dragged onto the boards out of their homes. Till then, they had to change the rule and say, no, it has to be a woman who is not your relative. So it's an endless task to get. Now people may have women who are, and as you know, we've had boards where the independent directors were domestic servants indeed, some of, I think Mr. Gadkari had some companies where he had his drivers and maids on his board. So against Gadkari, I like him. He's the most successful. But there are people who do that. So how many rules can you make? Ultimately, we have to agree it's going to create value, and if we believe that their own businesses is not going to be severe, I don't know what rules will do. Next one.
I understand, sir. I was actually coming more. Sorry, I was actually coming more from a point of view of having that contrarian discussion within the board. Like, for example, when we say we should go in for an electric vehicle, which is good, so everybody is actually getting into it. But when you actually make an impact on environment and impact on benefit on the company analysis, for some organizations, it may not actually make a good sense. So you may actually be shifting the fossil fuel demand from petroleum to coal.
Yeah. Yeah,
and in
yeah,
turn
yeah,
a
yeah,
higher electricity
yeah.
bill as well.
You're
The idea is,
100% correct.
where do we have, how can we generate this spontaneous discussion so that your decisions are that much more validated, that much more
Yes,
sensible.
yes, yes.
You're not just following the trend of the day. You're applying your mind to this entire thing.
I agree, Mr. Majumdar. I fully agree with you. Just asking, I think Dr. Shah said, I had a proposal in my board some meetings ago for a new factory. And they're with some number, I don't know, 40 crores or something, 80 crores, I forget now. And everyone approved it because, it had cash flow and all that stuff justified it on the financial thing. Then I just asked, is it a green building? And the whole management was thrown into confusion. They had not thought about it. So they went away. Proposal was suspended. And then after 3 months or 6 months, they came back. They had gone to, I think, Griha, which is an entity, redesigned the factory, taking out all the nice looking glass and all, and using material that was more sustainable. And indeed, the cost went down by 5 or 6% compared to their earlier proposal. And we had the benefit of a green building. So you're absolutely correct. But I couldn't argue that, if instead of cement you use something else that is so much less, but you could push them. Quite right. I fully agree with you.
Thank you so much.
Neeraj, how long
Friends,
are we going to go,
yeah.
Baba? I don't mind, but
Friends, it's really a pleasure seeing your overwhelming response. I can see many more hands and the questions behind, but I would like to take up just one question from Palomi Dhawan and before we close. Palomi, can you unmute yourself? Palomi, is my voice reaching you? Yeah,
Yes,
please
can you hear me?
proceed. Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for a great, insightful presentation. The Patagonia example, the case study was brilliant. I was just wondering, as we are studying and participating as independent directors, if there are some other Indian corporate case studies who have Patagonia is the last mile. They've done everything possible. Are there some who have taken baby steps that we could study, a few good examples, and we can then study them?
yeah.
Someone could have
Most
done
people
water, someone could have done.
yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not able from the top of my head to come out with an example, but certainly I'll get back to you because I have a lot of stuff on this thing. And I'm sorry I didn't anticipate a question of this sort. I will send to Neeraj or Manoj response, Ms. Dhawan. Okay,
Thank
on
you
this
very
one.
much, because this is a subject
People
very
have
dear
done
to me.
good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
People have done good stuff. It's true, but only in certain segments at a strategic level.
Yes.
Patagonia did it at a complete strategic level.
Yes. So,
Thank you.
Great. So, sir, with your permission, I would like to close. I can see many more hands, and as I said, my apologies for not being able to accommodate many more questions. I'm sure we will have many more discussions from your side, and we'll get an opportunity to ask questions. Still, those whom I could not accommodate, if you can share your questions over the mail to me or Manoj, I will put them across Mr. Mirza, and I'm sure he will be happy to accommodate and respond over the mail, and that way you will get an opportunity to connect and again directly hearing from him. So thank you all very much for participating in today's event, and thank you Nawshir sir for such an insightful session. I could see great feedback and the delight of the participants towards the interaction we had and the perspectives we have learned. And before we close, I would like to wish you all a very happy happy Diwali and season's greetings. Thank you.
Yeah, happy Diwali, but don't consume in this season.